learners and viewers. A very warm welcome to this session. Today we will be discussing about indicators of human trafficking. We have seen what is human trafficking, what are the vulnerability factors related to human trafficking, and now we will discuss the indicators of human trafficking. Identification of human trafficking, is a long-term process. You cannot identify a trafficker at one go. An incident may perhaps give some kind of an indication that human trafficking is taking place, but in many cases there are just be one or two indicators of trafficking. Commonly, there is a very little concentrate information or obvious signs of human trafficking. The traffickers do not carry the labels. Neither the victims or survivors of human trafficking have labels. There is at the most an assumption that human trafficking is taking place or is likely to take place. Other than this, human trafficking can easily be confused with other forms of criminality such as smuggling of migrants. Besides, the effect of human trafficking on victim is of such a nature that they may refrain from divulging any kind of information about this situation to anyone. The vulnerable people do not speak. They are people, who have been in continuous threat, trauma, so they will not even run away from the places of captivity because they have a fear that if they fail to run away, then they will be further abused, physically tortured by the traffickers. So they have no voices. Even if they shout in the beginning, they are drugged and abused and beaten up, and then they stop. Even, you don't see a sign even of anything which makes you understand this. Yes, he is a person who has been trafficked. They stop responding to abuses, to trauma. So it is very difficult to make out that this person has been trafficked. Direct reporting by victims and other people can be a reason when you know that this person has been trafficked, but as I just said, that they live in captivity, so it is very difficult for them to run away and come to the place of rescue or tell about what is happening with them. Then it is just that you have to be vigilant, you have to be cautious. If you are cautious about your surrounding, that cautiousness, that awareness can give you a hint that this person has been trafficked. A girl who was getting prepared in a beauty parlor could sense something going wrong because the other girl who was getting prepared in the same beauty parlor was looking sad. So when she called the police officers and they interrogated, it was found out that this girl was being, going to some other part of the country for selling that girl. So that girl was not happy. So you have to be vigilant, you have to be aware about your surroundings. Keeping an eye on other related activities such as tracking of information not related to trafficking directly. When people move on the borders, this can be a check. This is because traffickers employ a spectrum of methods to enslave trafficking victims. They use technology, they are properly updated and upgraded people. And they just have so many people as middlemen, pimps, madams, and there people who are there in every village from where people are trafficked. Some of these are kidnapping, abduction, rape and sale, sham marriage alliances, mail order bride system, sexual exploitation, labor exploitation and child exploitation. So if you can check these kinds of exploitations, then you can also check trafficking. Such incidents in the neighborhood and community are pointers for identification of human trafficking, because human trafficking is done for these offenses. So if you can just have a check on these offenses, then you will be able to trace the trafficker. Incident of adoption and missing children. MHA has related missing children with people who have been trafficked, and there is a portal for reporting missing children. Unlawful activities at certain place premises, including border crossing and checkpoints. This is very important at the checkpoints. So we have to have people who are working as border police officers or in CRPF, in military, to be vigilant about their surroundings, because if they find movements, they can check, they can investigate and interrogate people, and in cases where people are trafficked, they make the same kinds of statement. So it is easy for a person who is working with commitment to trace the cases of human trafficking at the borders, at the bus stands, at the railway stations, even in the trains. We have seen pamphlets about creating awareness of human trafficking. So if you sense a doubt or your sixth sense says something is going wrong, then do report on 112. Misleading advertisements in the newspaper, televisions, internet, and other forms of media. Something which is very lucrative but not practically possible. Just double check it, because the traffickers give very lucrative job offers inside the country and outside the countries. Somebody who is from your village, your neighbor, or your relative, and comes up with a very good marriage proposal, be cautious that you cannot just listen to him and follow him and believe him. Whatever he says, you have to have a check, because he may be a middleman or a trafficker. Suspicious movement of persons in the vicinity should be taken care by the beat police officers, by community policing, by the adults in the area, and by a proper vigil in the family. So we need to have somebody in the family who is able to check whether the child is safe or not, somebody who is able to monitor the activities of the child, and somebody who is able to monitor the helpers also. So people who just think that the maids will take care of their children and the adults at home should always go for police verification and should be double sure before keeping a person. And my personal advice will be that if you have an adult in your home, then do keep them, because all people are experienced people, and out of their experience, out of their love and emotions, they will keep your child protected. Employment of young poor children in homes, dhabas, factories, and agricultural field. We all have seen these people working. So this is a clear case of violation of Child Prohibition Act. Then this is a clear case of violation of a child's constitutional rights, his legal rights, and his rights under the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. So if you see any person, any child who is working at home, then do report it. Even in the dhabas, factories, and agriculture field, you cannot employ children, because they need to grow and develop. So the vulnerabilities need to be addressed by the state governments, and people have to be aware of their surroundings so that children are not employed when they should study. Human trafficking for sexual exploitation is closely linked to crime network, involving drug and gun running, car thefts, burglaries, corruption, immigration, criminality, visa and passport counterfeiting, and money laundering. So, drug syndicates should be reported. And it is not that the people who are prostitutes want to be drugged. It is out of their vulnerability to keep them shut or to accept whatever is happening to them is okay, they are drugged. So they may be the carriers and the users. So you have to have a sensitive approach towards understanding the issues of human trafficking. Then only you will be able to identify. Proactive activity needs to be done. Targeted raids should be conducted on the basis of the local intelligence unit in the brothels, in the hotels, in the massage parlors, beauty parlors, factories, mines, industries, agriculture fields, and on the social platform, the cyber crime police has to take into consideration all the movements, because you have to check whether somebody's privacy is getting affected or somebody's rights are being violated. Planned operation at tourist spots, places, border crossing and checkpoints need to be done by the authorities. Identification of routes used and planning operation at transport facilities and other suspected nexus points are very important to be handled by able officers, accompanying other agencies such as the labor and safety inspectors on their proactive operations to observe conditions and identify who is present is also a proactive activity. General indicators can be age. People who are young are vulnerable. Gender. Gender can be a issue, and gender can be a misnomer, because if you want for labor, you can prefer a male over a female. If you want to prefer for sex, it can be male and female both. For drugs, it can be male and female both. For organs, male and female both, but the person should be healthy. Location or origin. We have cases wherein we know that from particular communities, from particular states, we find cases of human trafficking more as compared to the other states, being the source or the areas from where they are picked, and the destination points where they are used, and the transit points where they move. Documentation is very important. By seeing the document, by recording everybody in the population register, you can indicate the cases of human trafficking. So everybody should have a record of his or her existence as Indian national. Last location can be traced by the mobile networks, by getting the feedback from the people, by the family members, and can be an indicator of case of human trafficking. The transport by which the traffickers move can be checked, so the police or the patrolling people jeep can see in case of suspect and interrogate people who carry small children, vulnerable people for trafficking. Circumstances of referral can also be taken care in understanding the indicators of trafficking. Evidence of abuse can be made out by medical examination, by physical examination, even by seeing a person. If a beggar has broken limbs, you can see and understand that the person has been abused. Assessment authentication of the referral people can also be used as an indicator of human trafficking. Specific indicators are very important. When you see these indicators, you can easily notify a case of human trafficking. Somebody who is a child looks very frightened and terrified, behaves in a way in which the other children of their age do not behave, do not have access to their parents, family members, somebody who is in orphanage, who has been left over, or who is missing, somebody who is not taking education. So that can be a indicator that the child should be educated. If the child is not going to school and going to a dhaba or a factory or a hazardous employment, or for as working as domestic help, then that is an indicator. Somebody who is deprived of playing and recreational activities, which is the need of a child to develop, then a child, if he is not allowed to come out of the family, travel alone, even to get his basic needs, somebody will accompany him, so the child will never be left free. That is an indicator. Every time the child will be escorted with people who are not their family members and relatives, then you can see marks, abuse marks, insult marks. And if you see their eyes, they are not confident, they do not bloom, they do not look happy. So these are the indicators. Then the presence of toys, beds of children or children clothing at the brothel places and factories. If raids are done, then this can be found out. The claim made by the adult, if he or she is found as an accompanied child. Illegal adoption cases, there are illegal adoptions happening in India. That needs to be checked because we have an adoption law. So if that law is violated and proper investigation is done of that case, then it will be easily known that this is a case of trafficking. The finding of an unaccompanied children inquiring addresses and other whereabouts is an indicator of trafficking. Cases of missing children is an indicator of trafficking. People who are found in peculiar abuse or exploitative situation is an indicator of trafficking. Children who are trafficked for domestic servitude may be living with a family, may not getting food, or they eat leftover food which lacks nutritious diet and balanced diet. They are not properly well clothed. They are not allowed to mix with the family members and friends and neighbors, or they do not get the opportunity to talk with the strangers. They are not sent to the school, not allowed to leave house, and they are not paid, or if they are paid very meager salaries. And inhumane treatment is a thing which can be taken into consideration while knowing that this person has been abused or has been trafficked. Concerning adults, if we want to check, then fear and anxiety. They will not be able to talk with people with confidence, neither they will be allowed to interact. They will not be allowed to move alone. They will be compelled to work in hazardous or exploitative situations with little or no payment. They will be found in dingy rooms or areas which are, at secluded places. They may be, behaving abnormally. So you will just think that this is something not normal or he is a mad person. They may be subjected to violence or threats all the time. That can be a case that they are not subjected to violence and threat, but their family members are subjected to violence and threat, so that they continue to work at that place. They suffer injury as a measure to control them. Discipline is in the form of punishment. Maybe they are not able to interact in the local language which is there, so you can understand that this person does not belongs to this place. then medical care is never provided to them, because if the doctor reaches them, then maybe the doctor will be able to understand their conditions. They do not have passport or travel identities, neither their own identities, Aadhaar cards, voter card, etc. So they cannot be traceable. They are afraid of authorities because sometimes they violate the law and sometimes they sign on papers and believing that if they go against the employer, then they are committing a crime. Sexual exploitation cases, you can go by age. So according to the location and the market, you can understand the case people who have been trafficked. Brothel movements or hostels or guest house movement of young people. Sometimes you can see that they are always escorted and somebody is watching them continuously. Have tattoos on their hands or on their legs to indicate ownership. They do not have money as they work as slaves and in captivity. They dress up differently to attract more people. You know, somebody, you can have an interaction and understand that this person has been brought or sold. Evidence that group of young women are under the control of others, so a lot of girls walking together with some men. Suspected victims, have violent sex, so cases of sex abuse, misleading advertisement, then they are not allowed to run away or go from the clutches of the traffickers. In labor exploitation cases, somebody from your own place will exploit you because you are vulnerable. They move in small groups. They live in dingy places or unsuitable places where any calamity can happen anytime, and they cannot be rescued. They are not dressed equipped properly. Then labor laws are not followed at the places of these employments. They work for long hours under deprived working conditions. They depend totally on the employer for their medical needs, for their physical needs, for accommodation, transport, whatsoever may be. They are humiliated, abused, and violence is there. They are surrounded by constant fear. They are paid small amount, or not even at par with the minimum wages act. Sometimes they are not even paid. Then the employer or contractor does not maintain proper records. Health and safety measures are not followed. Then they also pay for their tools, food and accommodation. And employment of children for menial tasks or for hazardous employment is also there. People who are begging or committing petty crimes can be easily noticed on the streets. Many of these are poor or children who need care and protection. They are a part of activities of organized criminal gangs, and somebody is continuously monitoring them. If they do not follow the orders, then they are punished brutally. They move in small groups in train, buses, so easily can be understood that these children are beggars. They can be vulnerability in cases of organs. So for organs, your vulnerability can be an indicator. Fear and stress can be an indicator. The language issue, because your language can be different than the language of your family members. Then repeating the same sentences, so whatever they have been taught, they just repeat the same sentence again and again before the authorities. So this is an indicator. They do not look physically or mentally like the other family members in the group. They lack confidence. Body language and the spoken words do not relate or do not match. So the authorities under the Organ Transplantation Act, the committee under the Organ Transplantation Act, the beat officer can easily find out the cases of organ transplantation. How will you validate the indicators of human trafficking? By stopping these people, by inquiring these people, by putting them different questions, by medical examination, by fact checking. So, you just check the family history, you inquire everything about the family from that person. So, somehow you will understand at some point he will start speaking the truth or he will stop speaking to you. Then checking the data with the missing person and relating these people who have been trafficked with the photographs of the missing persons. Psychological intervention by involving the psychologist. Family tracing is a very good method to find out, to validate whether these people are trafficked or not. Then checking the records. They will not carry their records. So if you just check all the records, you will find gaps and lapses. Then there is a possibility that they belong to the demand areas of human trafficking. And if you properly check the demand areas and you check that, okay, this child is looking healthy, so he may be employed as domestic labor or as a domestic help, and you check it, then you can find the truth. Checking at source and transit by the stakeholders can be an indicator wherein you can validate, yes, that this person has been trafficked. So indicators of trafficking are there. You have to be vigilant, you have to be safe, and then you have to keep your surroundings safe. So you can identify the traffickers, you can identify the victims and survivors of trafficking if you are aware. So in the end, I will just like to say, walk as you talk should not be followed on the streets. It should be followed at your home only. So if you walk on the roads, be safe, be aware of your surroundings, and do not be so much involved on the mobile devices that you even do not notice who is standing next to you. Thank you for this session. Have a nice day.